Take a look at your last meal. The bread, the rice, the vegetables, the meat. Roughly half of it, half of everything you have ever eaten in your life, exists because of a single chemical process that most people have never heard of. A process invented over a century ago. A process that, right now, is quietly breaking down. Because of a war most people think has nothing to do with food, fertilizer prices are surging, farmers around the world are cutting back, and the effects are about to arrive on supermarket shelves everywhere. This is the story of the invisible ingredient in every meal you eat, and why the system that produces it is far more fragile than anyone wants to admit. Walk into any supermarket in the developed world and you see abundance. Shelves stacked with bread, produce, meat, dairy. More food variety in one building than most humans in history saw in a lifetime. We treat this as normal, permanent, guaranteed. Behind that abundance sits modern industrial agriculture, the most productive food system ever created. One farmer today feeds more people than 100 farmers could 2 centuries ago. And underneath all of it, beneath the machinery, the seeds, the irrigation, is something so ordinary that nobody thinks about it: fertilizer. White granules spread across fields, season after season, in every farming country on Earth. It looks unremarkable. It is arguably the most important manufactured product in human history. Here is the part that should stop you. The Earth's soil, on its own, cannot feed 8 billion people, not even close. Natural soil fertility, the kind farming relied on for 10,000 years, supports roughly half the current global population. The other half, around 4 billion people, are alive because humanity learned to manufacture plant food artificially, which means 4 billion lives depend, every single day, on factories most people have never seen, running a process most people have never heard of, fed by a fuel supply that is anything but guaranteed. So, what happens when that system comes under pressure? We are finding out right now. At the start of the 20th century, humanity had a mathematics problem. The population was growing faster than the food supply could. Farmland was finite. Natural fertilizers, manure, compost, mined deposits were running out. Serious scientists predicted mass famine within decades. The problem came down to one element: nitrogen. Plants need nitrogen to grow. It is the building block of the proteins in every crop. And here is the cruel irony. The air around us is nearly 80% nitrogen. It is everywhere, unlimited. But plants cannot use it. Atmospheric nitrogen is locked in a form that crops cannot absorb. Then, in the early 1900s, 2 German chemists, Fritz Haber and Karl Bosch, solved it. They discovered how to convert it into ammonia, using extreme heat, extreme pressure, and enormous amounts of energy, the Haber-Bosch process. It is not an exaggeration to call it the most consequential invention of the 20th century, more consequential than the aeroplane, than the computer, because the Haber-Bosch process removed the ceiling on how many humans the Earth could feed. Global population in 1900, 1.6 billion. Today, over 8 billion. Roughly half the nitrogen atoms in your body, in your muscles, your DNA, your blood, pass through a Haber-Bosch factory before reaching your food. But the Haber-Bosch process has a dependency of its own: energy, enormous amounts of it. Converting atmospheric nitrogen into ammonia requires temperatures of around 450 degrees Celsius and pressures 200 times higher than the atmosphere. And the feedstock for the entire process, the source of both the energy and the hydrogen, is natural gas. Natural gas essentially is fertilizer production. It accounts for the overwhelming majority of the production cost of nitrogen fertilizer. When gas prices move, fertilizer prices move with them, which means the world's food supply is chained, directly and mechanically, to the world's gas markets. And the world's gas markets are chained to geopolitics. Russia, the Middle East, Iran. Every disruption in those markets flows through gas prices, into fertilizer prices, into farming costs, and into your food. Which brings us to right now. The war with Iran has disrupted gas markets across the Middle East, one of the world's most important regions for natural gas and fertilizer. Gas prices have surged, fertilizer prices have followed, hitting farmers who were already dealing with extreme weather, tariffs, and rising fuel and labor costs. And here is what makes this different. Farming runs on a season, not a stock market. Decisions made this planting season determine the harvest a year from now. When fertilizer becomes unaffordable, farmers don't complain and pay anyway. They cut back, and the consequences arrive later, quietly, globally, and all at once. To understand what happens next, you need to understand how farmers respond to expensive fertilizer. They use less of it. It is the only variable they can quickly control. But turning that dial has a direct cost. Less nitrogen means lower yields, the same field, the same work, and less food at harvest. Global grain reserves, the buffer between supply and crisis, typically cover only a few months of consumption. When harvests disappoint, that buffer disappears fast. In poorer countries, where families spend 40, 50, even 60% of their income on food, these price increases mean hunger. History is blunt about what follows. Food price spikes have preceded unrest and political collapse across dozens of countries. The Arab Spring was preceded by record global food prices. The entire system runs on an invisible ingredient that the world stopped thinking about the moment it became reliable. It is not reliable right now. There is a second layer to this vulnerability. Fertilizer production is highly concentrated. Russia is one of the world's largest exporters of nitrogen fertilizer. China is a dominant producer of processed phosphates. Belarus and Russia together control a huge share of global potash. Western countries spent decades allowing their own fertilizer production to shrink. High energy costs made domestic plants uncompetitive. Imports were cheaper. Plants closed. Governments are now scrambling to respond. Fertilizer has started appearing in national security strategies. But chemical plants take years to build. There are genuine attempts to break the dependency. Green ammonia, produced using renewable electricity instead of natural gas, is moving from theory to early production. Precision agriculture offers another path. Sensors, satellite data, and AI-guided application mean farmers can use dramatically less fertilizer for the same yields. Longer term, crop science may deliver plants that need less nitrogen altogether, or that can fix their own nitrogen from the air. That research is real. The honest picture is this. For the foreseeable future, feeding 8 billion people means running the same system we have. Gas into ammonia, into fertilizer, into food. There is a pattern in how modern civilization works. The most critical systems are the ones that became invisible. Nobody thinks about fertilizer. Nobody campaigns about ammonia. Nobody checks natural gas futures before buying bread. Because for 100 years, the system simply worked. That invisibility was the luxury of reliability. And reliability, it turns out, was never a law of nature. It was a supply chain, running through the most contested territory on Earth. The next time you look at a meal, consider what it actually represents. Nitrogen pulled from the air in a factory you will never see. Powered by gas from regions most people could not place on a map. The modern world does not run on food. It runs on the ability to manufacture food's most important ingredient, at massive scale, without interruption, forever. For a century, that ability was taken for granted. Right now, for the first time in generations, it cannot be. That is a very different kind of power. If you enjoyed this, hit subscribe. There's more where that came from.